Welcome to the F3 podcast, where we discuss all things that pertain to faith, family, and finances. And remember, no subject is off limits. We are your host today. I am Dr. Lionel M. Blair Sr., and I'm sitting next to the woman of God who have given me the awesome privilege of becoming a senior.
We're gonna have to remix that line. Stop telling everybody that.
She
People can gather. They got the point.
Yeah, but we have a child together,
Go
baby. I'm
ahead.
at,
We have
we's
multiple
married.
children together.
We's married. She is the sainted mother herself. She is Saint Jasmine the First, Dr. Jasmine Blair, my wonderful wife.
Welcome everybody to the F3 podcast. A shout out to all of our longtime viewers. We working on it. We working on it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. And remember, no subject is off limits because we will talk about what your pastor wants. So we've got definitely an interesting topic today. Now, I have seen this topic in a lot of different ways on the internet, and usually we see this from the point of view of the laity.
Yeah.
But today we want to definitely put a different spin on this because I find that most people that are in a disgruntled position or pastors, they've never been a pastor. Like they've probably never even been like a long-term volunteer.
Right, for real.
So it's definitely a unique dynamic, but we're definitely going to talk about this from a couple angles, and we're going to tie this into the word as well. I think the goal, if you take away nothing else from this episode, regardless of your views, and as always, tell us down in the comments. We want to hear what you think. But if you take nothing else from this episode, I think for me, I want you to take away at the end of the day, pastors are still people, and leading is accordance to the overall vision. You may not like it. It may not make sense to you. You may not understand. But the reality is you're not the one that's going to have to stand before the Lord if the job is undone or the vision is unfulfilled. But I'm going to kick it over to you to really bring us in to this episode. So what's on your mind?
There are so many complexities to leading. There's so many complexities to leading. Things you will never ever understand unless you're in the position yourself. Um, and the thing about it is that, see, someone who's a pastor or a senior leader of a ministry, ultimately, we have to hear from God, right? We have to hear from God. So in hearing from God, sometimes we may go a direction, or just hearing from God, or just going by the spirit of wisdom. We may go a direction that laity, congregants, or parishioners may not necessarily want to go, right? Some people think because they members that they got say so, and then see that comes from that Baptist stuff where you got to vote on everything, you know. And I'm not saying the members don't have a voice, because you do,
right?
Okay, but I'm talking about say so power ultimately. You notice in scripture, God never anointed a group of people first. He always anointed a person and assigned that person and that person's vision a group of people. God never starts with a group of people. He always starts with a person. That's the Bible, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules. So ultimately, our job is to be led by God, not led by the people. And sometimes that can cause a conflict. There's been plenty of people that have come to our ministry in the past saying, "Oh, y'all should be doing this, and y'all should be doing that, and y'all should have this kind of programs in place for your people." Well, I mean, our ministry is not, all that stuff you're trying to do from your last church and stuff is not feasible for this ministry.
And that's exactly where I was going. A lot of people have well-meaning ideas, great ideas that will absolutely be a blessing to the body, but they may not fit in the time and season where the vision is, or just may not fit at all. When people come with the, oh, we should do this, or I feel in my spirit we should be doing this, some of those things that you feel may not necessarily be for your whole ministry, your whole church to be doing. Maybe you feel the burden for it because it's something that you should be doing. And listen, that's an honorable thing. Talk to the pastor. Maybe if the church doesn't partner with it, maybe there are a few of the leadership team that can show up and support and be a part of it. If they have a website or an announcement board where they advertise these different things, and hey, Sister Watermelon is going down to clean up the beach this week. They're going to witness the people while they're there, but they're going to do a neighborhood cleanup and give out clothes and stuff. Let's support her if you're free this day, if you're not doing anything, or we can't be there, but we'll make a donation of a certain amount towards the supplies and the cleanup stuff. You never know what type of support you can get if you really sit down and have a conversation. But the offense comes in where people expect the whole church to stop what they're doing and make the time on their program to just hope whatever, don't matter if it's Bible study going on, discipleship, everybody's supposed to hope everything to go do this thing because you feel in your spirit. And sometimes that is a misplaced compassion. True story. Years ago, I was a part of a ministry, and the church was doing this thing where they fed the homeless. And, they were able to partner with some local restaurants who, donated, food. Like, let's say they would go pick it up on a Monday and they would distribute the food Tuesday. So it wasn't old food, but it was food they would end up writing off anyway because right. They was a nonprofit. They would get clothes and things. Some of the barbers in the ministry would come and cut hair, and they would minister to the people. You'd have some of the mothers iron and wash the clothes and make sure everything was present. Just wanted people to feel love. So you had this one woman. Well, I feel like we should be feeding the homeless over here. And the pastor's like, okay, that's the city over. Our church is here.
Right.
So we're doing this here in the community where we have the church so people can connect with us. They're like, hey, I want to come back. Or, hey, I don't have a home, but I know 30 more people that need this. We're actually in a vicinity to be a resource. Person got mad. Well, I feel like they should be doing this over here. It's homeless people here too. Okay, but what's stopping you from making some sandwiches and just going to hand them out over there?
Yeah.
So it wasn't even that the church wasn't doing for people. It just wasn't specifically the people that they wanted.
Right.
So we got to look at things like this. Some of those situations are a lose-lose situation. No matter what you do, somebody's always going to have an opinion. They're going to feel you should have done it better. You should have done it this way. You should have done it here instead of there. Or you should have done it on this scale instead of this scale. You should have done it on a Tuesday instead of a Friday. There's always somebody that's going to have some kind of opposing view. And there's that line between pleasing God, having a reverential understanding and value for what people are inputting, and taking all of that, considering all sides and using wisdom and being led by God to determine what is the best course of action for the ministry and for the vision at that time.
Right. A lot of people, they have bright ideas and they want the church to do it so that way they won't have to be fully responsible for it. Because see, if the church do it, then the church is obligated to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
If the church puts together, if the church have the food bank, if the church
mm-hmm.
Do all this and do all that, it's just, to me, it's just a lazy cop out.
Yes, it is.
It's a lazy cop out to keep people from actually doing things and executing things themselves. If the church is not doing it, why don't you put something together and then offer for the church, like you said, to partner with you? But no, everybody has these bright ideas and they get mad because the pastor or the senior leader, the apostle or the bishop or whoever goes a different direction. You understand what I'm saying? And you got to understand that his voice is greater than yours. So if he's not telling us to do that, if he's not telling the leader to do that, or leading the leader to do that, or if the leader gets a check in their spirit about that, or if the fact that they just don't think it's a good idea, they're the visionary, they see what fits and what don't. Okay, they operate from a different level of wisdom than you do. But you notice something in scripture, people always complained against leadership.
Yes, they did.
They always complain against leadership. Always, right? You know, look at Moses for an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
This man spent years in preparation just to be able to lead a stiff-necked people.
Mm,
All right.
that's good.
He spent years of preparation, right? And then, when he finally gets them liberated, see,
Mm-hmm.
God chose Moses.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even choose Miriam. Miriam was the oldest. He chose Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he chose Moses, the younger of the three. Okay, to liberate the nation. You know, um, Aaron was there just as Moses' voice, because Moses wasn't confident in his speaking because he had a stuttering problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he had a physical thing going on with his speech. However, he was anointed and graced by God to liberate a nation. And when they get to the river, okay, you done saw the plagues. Y'all done saw the plagues, right? You done saw the plagues, and then you get to the river. Oh, you brought us out here to die.
Mm.
And then Moses falls on his face, and God tells Moses, okay, what you got in your hand? Look at this staff. Lift up this staff. And God parted the seas, right? And then they got over it. Oh, we don't got nothing to eat. You
Mm.
brought us out here to die. And it's just like, okay, did you not see God work these other miracles?
Come on. Come on.
Did you not see people, no matter how successful a ministry is, or
Mm-hmm.
how many barriers a ministry breaks through in, people are going to always find a way to be dissatisfied.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna, because that's what disgruntlement
Yeah.
ultimately
Look it up
means.
on Google.
They're gonna always find something to be dissatisfied about.
Now, I want to touch back on something you said before we go further.
Uh-huh.
When you talked about people wanting the church to do stuff and it's a lazy way for them not to take it up
Yeah.
themselves. You know, I had a pastor once and I love this wisdom that he put in place. And people, oh, well, Pastor, I feel I should be doing this. The pastor said, okay, you know what? You put it together, you do it. Hey, I'll even let you use the church to do it. You let me know your availability. We'll find time. And if you can do this for about 6 to 8 months, bring me back a report of what worked, what didn't work, and how you feel this can fit in the church vision, I consider it. Most of them people probably did it 1 or 2 times, maybe about 5, and that was it.
Of course.
Because they realized the amount of work that went behind it.
Mm-hmm.
The time, the planning, making sure it got into the announcements, making sure that they got people to show up. They had to be there on time. They had to set up. They had to break down. By the time they did all that, they realized, whoo, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Someone, well, Pastor, you know, this wasn't easy as I thought. I know it wasn't. So you already, you want to burden the pastor with something that you don't even feel like putting the time and effort to do. Saying. Most of them people did not come back. It was funny. It was hilarious because he humbly said what he let them see through experience. He let them learn the hard way through experience that, you know what, this is a good idea, but this takes a lot more dedication. Well, Pastor, I don't have no help. Well, did you solicit anybody? I told you, you're welcome to go ask a few people if they like to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And most people, well, what? This is a great idea, but what does this have to do with the church? Right. They begin to see themselves. You see what I'm saying? Right. And a lot of people do not see themselves sometimes when they do stuff like this.
That reminds me, because we have a similar story. I'm about to bring some back to your memory. Mm-hmm. There was a time where someone on our leadership team was saying that we needed something for the youth, right? Mm-hmm. Because we didn't have a whole lot for the youth. I mean, our ministry, the way our ministry is set up, those who understand our ministry understand that the way our ministry is set up, we don't have a whole lot of youth programs and youth activities and services and stuff like that. Like we may plan something for them sometimes, but we don't have a youth church. none of that kind of stuff, and they felt like we needed to. But see, for us to make that feasible, we would have had to come out of our pocket more as a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and our congregation was small. We just that would have stretched the budget really really big. So then, this person offered their house. And they had a pretty decent sized house. They offered, hey, what you can bring over my house and we can do something, you know, or whatever. And power of God fell on them children.
Mm-hmm.
Powerfully, they were slaying on the floor, weeping,
Speaking in
crying,
tongues, everything
speaking in
else.
tongues, and everything else. God really moved powerfully on those young people. But after a while, they kind of just got tired of having it at their house. Like, okay, then you should have started it.
I didn't realize it was going to be speaking in tongues every week. Like I had something else to do later. My mom and them supposed to be coming over.
And her daughter on the floor weeping and crying and speaking in tongues, and she down there on the floor trying to calm her down. I'm thinking to myself, like, let that girl be.
You wanted this, but now it's inconvenient because it's taking longer than you really anticipated.
Right. You see what I'm saying? So don't offer no bright ideas that you're not willing to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't complain, when the ministry. Tell you something, man. Y'all they be sitting in these pews. We love you.
Mm-hmm.
We love you. We're called to minister to you. But y'all have the biggest mouths and the least contribution.
Mm-hmm. It's always that 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
Those that require 80% of the attention and time and counseling and prayer and pastor, I need you to do this, pastor, I need you to do that. We got this idea. I don't like this. I don't agree with that. They give the least, whether it's financially, whether it's voluntarily with their time, whether it's their commitment, whether it's taking initiative. They contribute the least but want the most. Usually the people that contribute the most want the least.
You don't have a right to complain about a ministry you give the least contribution to.
Absolutely. And that brings me to my next point of the perfect church delusion, because this is where a lot of this comes from. I think people sit at home and say, you know what, God, I want to go to a church that does this, and they got that program. Ooh, and they do that, and they do that. And in their mind, they create this perfect church. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with aspiring to be a part of a ministry church that does great things. Nothing wrong with being a part of a church that preaches Christ, that preaches, has a conviction, that does for the community and moves in the supernatural and does for the youth. But see, what we do is we get an idea, we find somebody, and when I say we, I'm talking about those of y'all with the church delusion. We find a church that we like, and then we join the church, and then we start, whether we realize it or not, making suggestions and little changes here and there, and got a question and was wondering. And subconsciously, we're trying to shape and mold this ministry into the perfect church that we had in mind. We wanted to have a certain look, and, because we want to be able to say, well, I go to this church and they do this. And it's more about the pride and satisfaction you get of saying that you're a part of an organization that does all these wonderful things. For some people, psychologically, it's a one-upmanship to make them look better, and it adds to their status. You want a ministry that does all these things that you don't actually participate in, you don't give your time to, you barely give any finances to, and you want to shape a ministry. Well, I like it here, but I feel like we should have this, or I feel like we should have that. Did you really take the time to sit and understand the vision? And this is why, and we'll have to talk about this again on a different episode, how people join a church or a ministry is very crucial, because you need to know where you need to be. You also need to understand that vision, because as I always say, God is not slow. God understood the vision before he called you there or sent you there. So if you're like, well, I wish we should have this part, either it's not time yet or it's never going to be a part. Mm-hmm. And it's very possible for God to assign you to a place that doesn't necessarily have the program you want.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That doesn't mean that they're out of step and out of timing. But I think the problem with church and ministry in America is we expect every church to be the same because many churches have followed this cookie cutter model. And I've been talking to one of our spiritual daughters about this recently. It's expected that when you join a church or a ministry, they're giving out school supplies when it's back to school time. Since the pandemic, now everybody does back to church in September. That's been a yearly thing since after the pandemic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, remember we had the pandemic in 2020, then 2021 when they first started to let up some of the restrictions. Remember, everybody rushed and got married like that September, October, while they had taken some of the restrictions off of how many people could gather. Once they raised, I think, to like 50 people, everybody rushed and got married, and people were starting to feel safe. So that since for the last 2 years now, September has been. No, excuse me. They started it during 2020. So the last 3 years now, September, because will be the third one coming up, is back to church. So after back to school, they do back to church. Oh, y'all come on back. And, it was a good marketing thing because, people go on vacation and they get deluded and they forget they're part of a ministry. So they do back to school, then they do back to church. You expect everybody to give out turkeys and stuff for Thanksgiving. You expect everybody to give out coats for the wintertime. You expect everybody to give out all these presents and toys for Christmas for all the little children that can't afford them. You expect the Easter egg hunt in April for Resurrection Sunday. All these things are expected for most people when they join. Oh, and they expect you to do some kind of food bank at some point, outside of like the turkeys and stuff. So these things are expected. These people, there's no manual now. But we've grown socially to expect these types of things to be a part of every church. And people look at you crazy. Well, they did this at my last church. Well, how come we don't do? There's no book that says you have to do all of these things.
No.
These are things that churches have done socially, and really you can trace this all the way back to like the World War II times, World War I times, where they had orphans. Orphans is just partnered with churches, and they did these Christmas plays, and they were bringing everybody to church to get the people to adopt the orphans. Another study for another day. But these have been tactics to bring people to church. There's nothing that says you're not a church if you don't do these things. Right. But we get mad and we expect all of these things. We don't expect the Holy Ghost. We don't expect the supernatural. We don't expect the healing of the sick and the casting out of death. But we expect all these other programs and functions.
And a lot of these programs replace our responsibilities.
Come on. Yes.
Nothing wrong with having something for the youth. There's nothing wrong with it. But youth pastors should not replace mother and father.
Youth pastors not in scripture.
Yeah, but that's a whole different thing.
That's a whole workshop in and of itself, because when you understand that youth ministry stem in and of itself stem from atheists because they had failed prison reform, then you'll understand that process later. Y'all got to look up that book, A Weed in the Church. And it's by Scott somebody. It's called A Weed in the Church, and it talks about youth ministry and how that whole thing got started. But go ahead.
See, a lot of you want the church to do something because you ain't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't doing it. When really, you think about it in biblical times. The families, they all sat together and sat under the same word.
Yes, they did.
You see what I'm saying? And then there was responsibility of the father to teach the wife and the kids at home. That's how it was in biblical times. Right.
Especially because most women were considered second-class citizens.
Yeah.
They were illiterate. They weren't permitted to go to schools and study under a rabbi and learn how to really function in that way. Right. So they had no choice.
Right. Yeah. And that's a different story too. We got to really dig into that women thing too.
Mm-hmm.
We got to really dig into that because some people are biblically slow. But when people become disgruntled,
mm-hmm.
They normally tend to lead revolts,
mm-hmm.
or participate in them. And I'm gonna say this to y'all: you can disagree with your pastor all day long, but God is not gonna side with no revolt. God is not gonna side with no coup. He not gonna side with none of that.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? He's not going to side with that. He never sided with that in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, y'all think God going to side with y'all. You know, he not. He didn't side with Korah and them.
Mm-hmm.
They was disgruntled. Matter of fact, he led some of the other elders of Israel, the leaders. He pulled a Lucifer move. Korah pulled a Lucifer move. He got the elders of Israel, some of the elders of Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the people, you know, to question Moses' authority. Because they didn't like the fact that one man had that much authority,
Mm-hmm.
and that they didn't like the way he was leading. Even if you look at David and Absalom, you know, Absalom did not like how David handled Tamar's rape, right? So disgruntled people also take matters into their own hands, because that's how he ended up killing his brother that raped his sister. Because he felt like his father should have did something about it. So then guess what? You started standing at the gate as a prince and start trying to win the people to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All because you were disgruntled, dissatisfied. And I'm gonna tell you something. When God sends you to a church, it's to submit and serve first. See, y'all go to be fed, right? Nothing wrong with being fed. But if that's the only reason you're there for, then you are a consumer. You are you are a user, because you only come there to eat. You don't come there to contribute. You ever met the
Mm-hmm.
people like that are equivalent to people that'll come to your house and eat up all your food, but won't help you wash their dish,
Mm-hmm.
won't help you clean up or nothing. You're not really a part of the fold. You're just a reoccurring guest.
Mm.
You're not a part of that fold. You are a reoccurring guest in that house. You're not a real member. You're not a real sheep. You're a
That's it.
goat. You are a goat.
Ooh.
Because goats
Mm.
goats come and go as they please. You're not a sheep. You're not a part of the fold.
That's it.
And sheep and goats have similarities in looks, but their natures are totally different.
That's true.
Come on now. Goats are always stray away. You understand what I'm saying? So, so a lot of you who stay in that disgruntled place, man, let me tell you something. It's not going to be well with you. So, how do we? I'm gonna answer this for you. Riddle me this, Batman. How do we handle the disgruntled? Some of y'all not gonna like this, but it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. First of all, and leaders, hear me. Hear me when I say this. First of all, you got to handle disgruntled by first letting them know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I know we don't like that. Because, see, the first approach normally we try to take is, oh, we try to maintain peace. And yes, maintain peace, but, let them know. Okay, listen, respectfully, I'm the pastor. Respectfully, I'm the senior leader here. Respectfully, I'm the visionary. Respectfully, I got us from point A to point B. Okay, you got to remind them of who you are. And then you have to remind them of of your previous victories and where they came from, right? God always reminded Israel, I'm the one that brought you out of Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm the Lord God that brought you out of Egypt. I'm the Lord God that did this and this and this for you. But you are a stiff-necked people and you're doing this. See, disgruntled people, you got to constantly remind them of where y'all come from as a people. Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
God did it. I mean, they didn't listen, but the fact that God felt the need to do it over and over again, you know, you might well follow God's model. Listen, you may not like the direction where we're going, but look at where we came from. We're not where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you point them forward. You may not like what we're doing, where we're going right now, but this is the goal. This is y'all know the vision. Y'all hear what I teach every week. Okay, this ain't nothing new. You may not like my decision, but this is the goal. Agree with the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Agree with the goal, man. Don't be sitting up here. Don't be sitting up here in a congregation, bucking up against the leadership. Oh, I don't like the way they doing that. Are you kidding me? Just because you don't agree, don't mean that ain't what God is sanctioning. So some of y'all think that y'all have to agree in order to submit.
Some of y'all think y'all have to agree for it to be God.
That part, that part, that part. Because see, I'm gonna tell you something. God is not gonna, God is not gonna side against His authority for you.
Mm-mm.
Now, if that leader is wrong, he has processes and procedures to take care of that himself.
And we've already done 2 episodes on that.
Yeah.
So go back and look on YouTube. My Pastor's Wrong, part 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But in most cases, it brings them to the reality of the vision, and it takes them out of the safe place in Delulu land of my perfect church. They can't be in Delulu no more.
Yeah.
You got to be faced with the reality. And the reality is sometimes you may want something that will never be part of the vision. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. You can transition honorably. Hey, I think this is great. I've enjoyed what I've received, but, I've really got a passion to, feed the homeless or to give out backpacks. And I see that's not a big part of the vision. And I'm not quite ready to go out and start my own organization. So I think in the meantime, I'll transition somewhere where this is a part of their vision. They do it annually. So I can feel fulfilled and like I'm giving back and answering that piece of my call. Just be honest.
Yeah, be honest.
That's all it has to be.
Yeah. And truth of the matter is, if you say God sent you to that ministry, and if He really did, and if
you leave because they're not passing out backpacks,
yeah, that's between you and God. That's your rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's between you and God at the end of the day. But and really, that's just a lazy cop out, because your passion for that could very well be a part of your ministry to the body.
Or it could very well be a part of some kind of unmet need that you have.
That part.
And now maybe you're so passionate about school supplies because you had to struggle bus it early on in life and you didn't always have school supplies, and you had to get donations if you had any school supplies at all. And you had to kind of fake it and make up excuses for why you didn't have supplies until later on. Maybe you're that person, and your deep need that you feel in your spirit comes from somewhere you actually need healing and deliverance. That's a very big possibility.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks you got on this episode? Because this one was meaty.
Yeah, it was. If you are in a church and you are disgruntled, most likely what you need to do is shut up. Shut up. Because a lot of times you're speaking into something you don't have the full revelation of. So you just need to just shut up. You don't have to agree with every decision in order for you to be faithful. Okay, when does God need your permission or your agreement to choose someone or to take a ministry a certain direction?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what pastor doing ain't God. If you figure what they doing ain't God that much, then why would God send you there?
And I'm going to say this before we close out. Make sure your motive is pure, because for many of you, the reason why you may not be happy with the direction is because you saw it going a certain direction. So because you saw yourself in a certain position in that future direction. So we're going to leave that mic drop there. Listen, tell us down in the comments what you think. Be sure to follow us over on IG at King and Queen Blair. Until next time on the F3 podcast. Goodbye.